As Harvard pursues ambitious development projects in Allston, residents fear that their neighborhood, which they describe as uniquely hospitable to families, immigrants, and artists, will come to look a lot like Boston's Seaport district, a sterile landscape of laboratory and office buildings, paired with luxury housing that skews wealthy and white. Wary as they are of a Seaport imitation, area residents see great potential in the hundreds of acres Harvard is poised to transform. They call it a dreamscape, a blank canvas, and the envy of any urban planner. They just don't want the opportunity, they say, to be squandered. The university owns about a third of the land in Allston, including the Soldiers Field Road athletic area and the business school campus, both of which have long been Harvard occupied. With its newly completed science and engineering complex, the university has pushed its institutional presence further west. Near the science and engineering complex, Harvard has dedicated several of its properties to a street art initiative and rented out a building to Swiss bakers. But there's far more coming to the immediate area. Right beside the science and engineering complex, Harvard plans to develop a 36-acre enterprise research campus, where it imagines an innovation district that will attract research-oriented companies, businesses, and startups. The 6-acre Phase A, under development by Tishman Speyer, will include a hotel and conference center, hundreds of residential units, and retail and restaurant areas, in addition to office and lab buildings. Harvard is driving even more commercial development on the other side of its science and engineering complex. Land it leased to developer Samuels & Associates now hosts the Continuum, a complex that features a Trader Joe's, Starbucks, several restaurants, and more than 300 high-end residential units. Harvard leased the company a second parcel across the street from the Continuum, which will eventually host more retail and restaurant space, as well as more than 250 additional residential units. West of the two Samuels developments, Harvard owns more than 24 properties on, or clustered around, Western Avenue, which connects the campus to the existing neighborhood in central Allston. It's unclear which properties Harvard plans to redevelop and how soon, but the Holton Corridor, a parcel bordered by Holton, Litchfield, Everett, and Lincoln Streets, seems to be an area of immediate focus. Harvard has leased a 5.2-acre parcel within the corridor to Berkeley Investments, which plans to construct 2 commercial buildings as well as 1 residential building with upwards of 250 units. All this high-rise, market-rate commercial development is a far cry from the way Harvard originally envisioned its plans for the land, which is for academic use, and which residents could reasonably expect to keep in scale with the existing community. The current trajectory has left residents concerned about how the character of their neighborhood will change in the coming years, especially because Harvard's flurry of activity is attracting coattail developers to the area. For example, down the street from the future Enterprise Research Campus, a team of developers are working to transform Stadium Auto Body and nearby parcels into Nexus, a massive biotech and residential complex of more than 500,000 square feet. Continuing down Western Avenue, there's the former Skating Club of Boston, which a developer plans to replace with more than 600 residential units. Beyond are the Radius apartments, complete with a mindfulness meditation room and pet spa, which were finished in 2019. According to resident Brent Whelan, there's, quote, a new Allston taking shape along Western Avenue in the Holton Corridor, a world of modern and expensive apartments, very few condos, increasing lab space, higher-earning professionals, not much community. Pointing to the plans for the Enterprise Research Campus, which portend towering lab space and expensive apartments, albeit a significant percentage of which will be considered affordable, according to Boston City guidelines, Whelan says the forthcoming commercial campus would, quote, seem to define a very concentrated version of the new Allston. He predicts it becoming a, quote, enclave of highly productive, lucrative privilege, one that has little relationship to or continuity with the existing neighborhood it's growing into. If the ERC will truly be integrated into the old Allston, he said, it's not clear how. Whelan is part of the Harvard Allston Task Force, a 15-person advisory body charged with reviewing Harvard's plans for the Enterprise Research Campus and other local developments. But he and many of his fellow task force members have said they can't engage meaningfully in the planning process because the university has not articulated a full vision for the entire area, instead soliciting the views of community members on piecemeal proposals. A November letter to President Lawrence S. Bacow, signed by 13 of the 15 task force members, asserted that, quote, Allston-Brighton could be a living laboratory of housing innovation, but the current process in Allston of ground leasing parcels one by one to private developers leaves no room for such innovations as community land trust, cooperative housing, and other approaches to social housing. It feels like Harvard is acting as a developer, said Joanne Barber. Each deal has its own little bit of housing attached to it, and so what the community ends up having to do is fight to get any level of affordability because they're working with for-profit developers. Barber directs Charles View Incorporated, a nonprofit that seeks to promote the, quote, diversity and vibrancy of the Allston-Brighton community through housing initiatives and social programming. She continues, it's this piecemeal approach that has us all concentrating just on each development at a time, so you don't get a full vision or a full picture of what this community could look like in terms of mixed-use, mixed-income housing. Whelan said he is concerned about the prognosis for his longtime home. My imagination tells me that Harvard is building a type of very modernistic, very technology-driven piece of the city, he said. And it's incompatible with Allston, and so they don't really want to talk about it too much. It would not be a very heartwarming discussion in the neighborhood. In a December letter in response to the task force, Bacow wrote that the university agrees there is real urgency in making substantive efforts to address equitable and affordable housing in the region. He also wrote that he has asked Harvard's Chief of University Planning and Design to supply the task force with additional specifics in due course in response to their questions and complaints. We are all committed to creating a district that the university and the community can be proud of, he wrote. We will continue to work collaboratively with the city, elected officials, and the Allston-Brighton community to further explore many of the important issues that we've heard about through the ongoing community feedback process.